Welcome to Rewatch and Rank. On this channel, we rewatch older TV shows, provide a summary and opinion on the episode before ranking each episode against each other. Today's episode is Charmed Season 2, Episode 15, Give Me a Sign. The episode in a nutshell is just a brief summary and reminder of exactly what happened within this episode. So we open this episode with Phoebe and Piper coming back from a jog, and Piper is constantly comparing Dan and Leo, and Phoebe spits out a time, and Piper's like, I can't believe we ran that long. And Phoebe's like, we didn't. I was just calculating how long you've been comparing Dan and Leo. And then Prue comes in. She's ordered a bunch of camera equipment because she's decided that she wants to pursue photography, which the previous episode had foreshadowed by having her past life being a photographer. And Phoebe is a little iffy on the dream because the money, the amount of money success that you can have can vary in an artistic field like that. And she's a little bit on the fence, but Piper's like, you always wanted to be a photographer in college. You wanted to win like prizes. You were that was like your hobby. You only took the job at the museum and the auction house so that we wouldn't lose the house and you could bring in money. But, now they have the club. Phoebe's getting her education and will get a job after. So, Piper's like, it's your turn to follow your dreams. And then basically, Phoebe kind of escapes to go cast her spell to send Piper a sign, which Piper told her specifically not to, so Piper chases her to the bathroom. Meanwhile, Prue, who's left alone with the camera equipment, takes a picture of herself in the mirror before being kidnapped by Bane, who has escaped from jail, where demons posing as guards were going to assassinate him. Obviously, Phoebe casts the spell in the bathroom, and they start getting signs from, Leonardo's boutique in Bodega Bay. Then, the Mariners page opens up in the Book of Shadows. When they're watching TV, they have Mariners versus Angels, which 8-7. And so basically, they get a series of signs that, and a Leonora Watkins phones the house. So they get a series of signs while they're looking for Prue that essentially they think are between Dan and Leo at first, but then realize that they might also be leading to Prue. Of course, while all this is going on, Daryl lets them know that Bane's escaped, which lets them know who kidnapped Prue. He also provides them with the weapon that was left at the scene of the crime, though he doesn't know what it is, only that it is most likely supernatural in nature. And Phoebe gets a premonition that confirms that Bane was the one to kidnap Prue. And they basically start searching for her and for the demons that are behind the weapon, which they initially think Bane is working with those demons to kill Prue, which when we see Bane and Prue's side of things is not the case. Bane took Prue to his dream home that he was having built before he was arrested, and basically there she's initially hostile, then he wins her trust. He saves her life when one of the demon's underlings comes to kill him, and she's there unexpectedly. They defeat him, they sleep together. Piper and Phoebe arrive, take Bane home, though they are reluctant to work with him. Litvak, who is the upper level demon, then comes in and basically telepathically links to Bane and says, I'll spare you if you bring the witches. Bane then goes ahead and brings the witches while coming up with a plan with the sisters. However, to their surprise, when they freeze the room, Bane and the underling freeze, but Litvak doesn't. This makes them feel like they've been double-crossed, especially when Litvak says that Bane was aware of their powers. However, Prue, being the sister who has feelings for Bane, tells Piper to unfreeze Bane, and when she does so, Bane then turns the underling's weapon against Litvak. Then Litvak turns the weapon on Bane, but Bane dodges, and he and the underling, their weapons hit each other. They end up vanquishing. Bane then does the right thing and allows himself to be rearrested. And then the sisters, basically at the end, are kind of having their P3 get together at the end after vanquishing a demon. And this is when Piper and Phoebe tell Prue about the spell that led them to her, and that's how they found her. And then she asks what the end result was with regards to Dan and Leo. And Piper looks at Leo and says that she never needed a sign or a spell to know where her heart lies. And that's where we end the episode on such a happy note. So now we get to the part of the video where we are going to be ranking the episode on our two lists. The first one, of course, is our mostly objective ranking list, and then the second is the personal ranking list. All right, so we'll start with our mostly objective rank values. I've highlighted the ones that apply. And we'll start with our single episode supporting character introduction, which is Litvak, who is an upper level demon, someone that in Book of Shadows is referred to as a level 2 demon, which they discover based on the weapon that he left behind, as he is one of the few demons that are able to give it out. And he is a telepathic demon that can view a person's memories by touching their head, who can also telepathically link to people whose essence he's able to sense and communicate with them that way. So pretty powerful demon, and that is worth 1 point. Then we, of course, have our multi-episode supporting character development, which has to do with Bane. We learn that because Bane has knowledge of evil and evil likes to keep itself a secret, now that he's no longer useful to them, him knowing their secret is a liability. Therefore, that is why the demon Litvak, who he was working for, in addition to Barbas, was basically sending his underlings to assassinate him by getting him out of the prison by pretending they were taking him to a hearing, and then they were going to assassinate him in the parking lot, but they failed because he manages to anticipate the betrayal. And then when he kidnaps Prue, he takes her to essentially an entire property development area where he was building his dream home, but he also, it's later revealed when Daryl gives Piper and Phoebe the files on Bane that were being put together, that he was actually in charge of the entire property development, and that was his true dream, and he hadn't always done things on the wrong side of the law, but eventually fell into the wrong side of the law to try to make his dreams come true, which is still wrong, but more forgivable than evil for evil's sake. Anyways, that's 2 points, and then another 2 points for our multi-episode supporting character growth, which is, of course, by the end of the episode, Bane has decided to accept responsibility for his poor behaviors, his kidnapping, his escape, all of the crimes he had committed beforehand, and he basically has Prue call Daryl so that he can come and take him back to the prison, as he's decided to take responsibility for all of his crimes and his past choices, which is very big of him once Litvak has been sorted out. Then, of course, we have our multi-season main character development, which is Prue deciding to pursue photography as her new career, and also the fact that Prue was kidnapped at the start of this episode. And that's worth 4 points. Then we have 4 points for world building. In this episode, it's the first time we hear the source mentioned, and we know that the source is going to be a long game evil in the series overall. So this is our first mention, which is worth calling out. And then we also learn about the fact that demons have an hierarchy where, there are upper level demons, mid-tier, low-tier demons, and up till now, I would feel like the implication is that they've been dealing with lower tier demons, especially since another development is that Piper's freezing completely doesn't work on Litvak, who is an upper level 2 demon. And since it hasn't ever not worked before, I believe, this would then be something new and would also support the fact that they had been previously dealing more with lower level evil. Now, Piper's freezing has been resisted before. Like when Jeremy attacked her, she would freeze him, he would fight through it, and each time she froze him, he would fight through it faster. That has happened. This time, though, he didn't freeze at all. He didn't have to resist it, it just didn't work. That is why it is worth noting down. Anywho, that was 4 points as well. And then our final positive 4 points goes to the main relationship development, which once again, because we are in a triangle, also goes hand in hand with our main relationship regression or breakup. So once those have evened out, it basically amounts to a 1 point for those together, because the development's worth 4 and the regression is worth -3. And this, of course, has to do with the triangle signs. When they're interpreting them as Leo versus Dan, there's some ups, some down, it'll give a sign to Leo, but then sign to Dan, sign to Leo, sign to Dan, back and forth, up and down. And then at the end of the episode, we get a really good moment where Piper says that she never needed a sign to tell her where her heart truly lies while she's looking at Leo, implying that she knows that she likes Leo more than Dan. And as I had speculated in the previous episode, Dan is safe. Leo, she doesn't know when he'll get his wings back, if he's going to want his wings back, and that will put them back, and which is why she's still trying to stay with Dan, who's a nice guy, who's good for her in all of the ways that she should want, and yet we know her feelings for Leo have always been just that little bit stronger. And there's also a really nice moment when Piper is letting Leo out of the house after he offers information on the demon hierarchy. And when the door closes behind him, Leo turns back and, briefly reaches back to touch the door, which he knows Piper's on the other side of, before he then leaves, which is just amazing. Truly amazing. And then our final negative messaging or behavior, which of course is the fact that Bane does initially kidnap Prue using what we would assume would be a rag with chloroform on it, though where he got that, I don't know. But either way, he kidnaps Prue. Kidnapping is a crime, therefore that is negative messaging or behavior, and that is worth a -2 points. And that brings us overall to a ranking of 12 out of 10. However, as it's out of 10, the episode will be officially put in as a 10 out of 10 episode. Which brings us to a reminder of our Season 2 rankings so far. On our mostly objective ranking, in first place we have, actually, before I get into the list, once again a reminder, when more than one episode gets the same score on our mostly objective list, we just put it into the list as the episode airing order. Which then means in first place we have Witch Trial, The Painted World, She's a Man Baby, a Man, They're Everywhere, P3H2O, Ms. Hellfire, Awakened, and then this episode is our 8th 10 out of 10, Give Me a Sign. We then have Morality Bites, Heartbreak City, Pardon My Past, That Old Black Magic, Reckless Abandon, Animal Pragmatism, and then 15th, The Devil's Music. Alright, so for my personal ranking, I have said it so many times in the past. I love the drama, I love the romance, I love the magic. I love the magic a lot, but really for me the series really gains its true lovability and awesomeness from all of the sibling drama, relationship drama, family drama, all of it. I love that. That's my favorite part. And this episode, as we know, I am a fan of the Piper and Leo endgame. So I loved this episode because of those moments where she's finally decided that she's going to be with Leo, that she never needed a sign to tell her where her heart truly lies, where Leo goes back and touches the door. And I mean, like I said, we never hated Dan, but we do know Leo was the end game. We know the feelings between Leo and Piper were stronger. The chemistry between the characters was stronger. it was just inevitable, and I'm glad that we finally got here to where it's actually happening. Again, nothing wrong with Dan, just he wasn't Endgame, and I don't think he ever was going to be, because even when Leo was out of the picture, Piper was always hesitant because she truly had the feelings for Leo instead. We've gone over this. We love that she's made her choice and that it was the right one. So, love that. I also loved how, Piper and Phoebe are in this panic. Prue's missing. They're getting all these signs. They're starting to get annoyed by the signs because now isn't the time. Their sister's missing. Meanwhile, on the Prue and Bane side, they're kind of off in their own little world in this deserted house. They're, at first she's semi-hostile, but then, he basically is like, I just need your help. I know I went about it in the wrong way. And she's like, you kidnapped me. I can't help you. And then, then he goes to let her go because if she can't trust him, she can't help him. All he wanted was her help. And when she is released, she doesn't go because now he is starting to earn her trust. And they always had that chemistry even when she was posing as Ms. Hellfire. And then, of course, we have the demon attack. He kind of gets her out of the way, takes the like allows himself to be blown away, saves her life. This is when she trusts him. She then starts to tend to his wound, and then they fall into bed together, or rather onto the floor together. And then the next morning, they're having their sweet moment. And then this, of course, was when the sisters find them. And Prue's now fully on his side, agreed to help him. Sisters then reluctantly help him, and so on and so forth. And then at the end, they have the really sweet moment when he shows his character growth by allowing her to call Morris and go. And then she joins her sisters at the club to say Bane has now been taken back to prison. So the reason I didn't add this on the mostly objective ranking is because I had decided that if a supporting relationship starts and ends in the same episode, I wasn't going to put it in the mostly objective. Or rather, if there's gain and loss in the same episode, I should say, not just start and end, but gains and losses, then it cancels each other out because they're both two. And so I would just move that to discuss on the personal side, which is why I'm pointing it out here. And honestly, I think that they had really good chemistry as characters. It's just a shame that he was on the wrong side of the law. I also like so I've mentioned before that Barbas is my favorite demon. I don't know what it is about the demon of fear, but he has great charisma. There's just something about him that it's like, I know you're evil, but I like you anyways. You're amazing. And Phoebe even says it more sarcastically, but she even has a throwaway line in this episode where she refers to how he worked for their favorite demon, which is the demon of fear, and we know the demon of fear does recur quite often and sometimes even helps them, but mostly is against them. Anywho, my favorite demon, I loved that Phoebe pointed out that it was their favorite demon, even though she did so sarcastically. And anyways, what all this rambling boils down to at its core is that I loved this episode. I loved all of the romantic drama, the personal dramas, even like the slight sibling, like, when Phoebe discourages Prue from her dreams and then Prue is kidnapped, and Phoebe has that added, I don't want me discouraging her to be the last thing that I ever said or interacted with Prue when she's worried about her. That sibling drama aspect. This is one of the episodes that's like, this is why I love the series. And so for me, it was 10 out of 10. Actually, my favorite so far. Spoiler for our season 2 rankings so far in the personal ranking, in first place, this episode. Give Me a Sign, then P3, H2O, Awakened, Ms. Hellfire, Heartbreak City, Witch Trial, The Painted World, They're Everywhere, Pardon My Past, Reckless Abandon, She's a Man, Baby, a Man, The Devil's Music, Animal Pragmatism, Morality Bites, and then in 15th, That Old Black Magic. And now we've come to our final segment, which is our series ranking so far, where we will be comparing and ranking each of the seasons against each other. So far in our mostly objective ranking, season 1 ended at 73.18%, And season 2 has so far gathered 116 points out of 220. And on the personal ranking side, we ended out with 71.50% for season 1, and season 2 so far only has 84 out of a maximum possible 220. And with that, we've now rewatched and ranked Charmed Season 2, Episode 15. Give me a sign, like and subscribe if you'd like to, and I'll see you in the next episode.